The last time I was here, we did talk a little bit about reading the Bible through, and gave a few ideas about how to do that. And I am not giving a test, but I always like to follow up. How are you doing? How are we coming on reading the Bible through? Anybody decided to start, especially when you didn't have anything to do last week? I imagine you moved pretty through. Anybody got a word on how it's coming?
I'm still staying with mine.
Great. Now you were about half through, weren't you?
I think so, yeah. I looked back to see when I started, and I started the first of the year. I can't remember.
Of last year?
Last year, yeah. I can't remember if I told you I started it from Brother Mike had suggested to me.
Yeah.
But I can't remember if I took a 2-year plan, 18-month plan, or whatever. But anyway, I'm still going on with it. I'm thankful for it. So.
Right. Well, anybody else have a word? I don't want to ask for a show of hands, but I am curious. Everybody tried? Most everybody tried?
Well, I did start. You said we were supposed to study about Jacob.
Right.
I did sit down during that time when I was at home and read some chapters on him, because you said that we were going to do that. So I did that.
Great. That's encouraging.
Mm-hmm.
Jacob starts in about chapter 25 of Genesis. And there's 50 chapters in Genesis. So if you start back in the beginning with Jacob, it would take you halfway through the book of Genesis, if you do everything. Some of it breaks a little bit with Joseph in Egypt, but the rest of it there is all in Jacob. As I said, that his name is mentioned 367 times in the Bible, just Jacob.
Wow.
And if you talk about Israel, that's 2,470 times. Some of it is just Israel, Jacob the person, and some of it is the nation of Israel. Now, I don't know too many people that have a whole nation named after them. I just wondered if God were to name a state after me, or a whole country, I'd just soon be named after Tennessee or Texas, where are you going? I'm going to go to Ray. I'm going to go visit Texas. But it just seems like it's a major thing to have a whole nation named after you. And all of a sudden to be called the God of Jacob, the God of Israel, over and over and over again. So I don't know how it would be to be called the God of Jonathan. I'm gonna name myself after Jonathan. So every time you think of Jonathan, you think of me. So with that in place, I would hope that we'd take a look and read through a little bit about Jacob. Now we were on chapter 32. That was when Jacob was going to wrestle with the angel. Now, I did a little bit of internet study on this. I mean, I could sit there and try to calculate how old he was, but the Jews do a pretty good, Jewish people. Somebody told me don't ever use that word Jewish, so use the word Jewish. Jewish people, they do a good job of chronology, of genealogy. And so, just out of curiosity, how old do you think Jacob was when he wrestled with that angel? How old would you guess that he was? I know it'd be a guess unless you looked it up or counted all those years.
Close to 100.
He was very close. 97. He's 97 years old when he wrestled with the angel. Now, I don't know if I could win a wrestling match against an angel if I was 20. That would be rough. But what if you are visualizing, and maybe you've seen some drawings of Jacob wrestling with the angel, and it's pretty much a physical battle. They have the angel wrapped around Jacob, and they have Jacob pulling on the angel. And then that got, I don't know, maybe it's a boxing match. But what kind of battle, what kind of wrestling match do you think it was? What do you think, if you visualize that?
Seems like all the older people in the Bible were all real wiry and strong. I mean, it'd probably be a wicked wrestling match.
Yeah.
I don't see a boxing match. I see them rolling around in the dirt. And Jacob was not going to give up. He's 97. He doesn't care if he made 98. He was going to get the best advantage of that angel.
Yeah.
Until he blessed him.
Now, how many of you think it was a physical wrestling match? You think they were rolling around in the dirt, pulling on each other?
I think so. I don't really know any different, but I think so.
Because it said he touched his hip.
Right.
And dislocated his hip. So.
Now, if he was strong enough to do that, and remember there was the death angel that whipped the crowd later on, and then there was a death angel that went through Egypt and killed everybody. So an angel is no small feat. If he wanted to, he could have wiped him out in a second. So evidently he didn't want to kill him. And he didn't want to completely. But what was going on just a little bit before chapter 32? Do you remember anything in chapter 32? The reason why I was asking, why would he touch his hip? Why wouldn't he touch something else? Why would he touch his hip?
It seemed like it said in the scriptures that because he couldn't overpower him.
Yeah.
And he finally
Slowed him
maybe
down.
from exhaustion. I don't know.
Well, I know I'm asking a lot of questions, and I assume that you probably have read it, but he was going back from Laban. He left Laban because of Laban was cheating him out of everything. And he asked his wife, Leah and Rachel, said, I see that Laban and his sons, they want to take everything I got away. They haven't given me anything. And God also told him, you go back to Esau. You go back. I want you to go back. So it wasn't just Laban, wasn't just conflict with Laban when he said, Laban doesn't look at me like he did before. I mean, he's not talking nice to me. He's talking real mean to me. Especially when all his sons went to him and said, you know, Jacob came here as a stranger. Now he has stolen everything we got. He's stolen it all. And Laban got to think, see, he is a thief, isn't he? Now, they probably knew all about Jacob's past. And they probably knew you stole Esau's birthright. So he had a reputation that went ahead of him. Now, if you were going to do business with Jacob, the first thing you'd do is grab your wallet. You'd be very careful around him. This is not going to be a fair deal. And so Laban and his sons were right to be thinking that Jacob is going to take everything we got. Now, right, Jacob said, you've changed my wages 10 times. And if God wasn't with me, I wouldn't have a thing. What is that right? Isn't that right? And so then God, through those circumstances, God came to him and he said, okay, it's time for you to go back. Go ahead and go back. I promised you that you were going to go back to Canaan. You ran away. I want you to go back. And so he gathered all his stuff up and he took off in the middle of the night, headed back. Now, somebody went and told Laban that Jacob has taken everything we've got, and he's left town. He stole away in the middle of the night, and he stole everything we got. Now, Jacob looked at it, well, I worked for it. Laban looked at it like he was stealing it. Now, how would you feel if you were working for somebody and you picked up your paycheck at the end of the month or end of the couple of weeks, and your boss said, now, I'm giving this money. I know you stole it, but I'm going to give it to you right now. Well, I didn't steal that money. That's what we agreed on. But from Laban's point of view, he stole it all. And he said, I'm going to go get it back. And so he was, I think, 10 days ahead of him. And he caught up with him in a place called Gilead. And at least that's what they named it. And so they got there, and God met Laban in a dream, and he said, don't you say anything bad about Jacob, or you're going to be a dead man. So you let him go. And so he got back there. That's more or less how Laban interpreted it. He said, don't you say anything good or bad to Jacob. But when he got there, he said, Jacob, why did you leave like that? He said, you know everything you've got is mine. Your daughters are mine, Rachel and Leah. Now, you worked for them 14 years for those two girls. And he said, all your kids are mine. Everything you've got's mine. Now, you think about that. What happens if your father-in-law were to come to you and say, your wife is mine and all your kids are mine? You just think about the cultural differences that are going on at this time. He said, everything you got's mine. This house is mine, all your furniture, everything you got's mine. Even though you work for me, everything's mine. And I'm taking it back unless God told me not to. And then you remember the idol that Leah took and hid it in the estate. And then Jacob said, he said, okay, you took it all, but let me ask you this. Why did you steal my idols? He said, I tell you what, you search everything I got. And if you find that idol, I'm going to kill the person that's got it. They're going to be dead. I'm going to kill them right now. It said that he didn't know that it was Leah that stole it. And so they searched all through it. And do you by chance remember what Leah said when they found it in her tent? That's right, I want you to read the Bible. It said Leah was sitting on the camel's saddle. And she hid the idol in that camel saddle somewhere. I don't know what a camel saddle looked like, but anyway, she hid it there. and she said, I'm sorry, Father, that I can't get up and show you respect. But, put it in blunt terms, she used a little euphemism. She said, it's with me as the way of women. I'm on my period. I can't get up. He said, okay, you don't need to get up. But she was sitting on it. And so he left, and then they got out there and they got to talking. Now that happened several chapters before this chapter 32, got a little bit before 32. So at any rate, he was headed back. Now, if you had to describe Jacob as a character, what character would you place on Laban, on Jacob? How would you describe him?
I think he had a little bit of deceiving in him.
Oh yeah.
It started back when he and Esau were eating the stew.
He got it from his mother, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
His mother followed up on it.
Yeah.
So at any rate, I'm really trying to encourage you to read these chapters because there's a mountain of stuff in them from 25 on. Half of Genesis is about Jacob in a roundabout way, counting his family. So at any rate, he had a plan. Now, there's a statement in Brazil called jeito. That means there's a way. Now, one of the biggest problems you have, or we had, and everybody has in Brazil with their kids, is they pick up the culture. And that culture in Brazil, one of them is called a jeito. That means there is no such thing as no. There's always a way around it. You can always finagle and get around it. And you're never wrong if this computer, this laptop, whatever it is here, were to fall on the floor and break, and while I was handling it, it's not my fault. I would say it broke itself. I didn't break it. It broke itself. Glass fall off and break. You say it broke itself. And so I told the kids, I said, I don't want to hear that word anymore. Don't ever tell me that it broke itself, because it was in your hand last when it broke. It may have been something wrong with it. But anyway, so Jacob had thousands, hundreds, I say thousands, maybe thousands, of cows, and camels, and goats, and all this kind of stuff. And he was headed down the road to Jacob, to Esau. And then he sent some men over there, go tell Esau I'm on the way. Now, they came back, if you read this chapter, they came back and they told Jacob, said, well, Esau's on his way to meet you. How did he know I was coming? You know, kind of like. But he said, he's coming towards you. And he's got an army of 400 men coming at you. Now that would put shockwaves through somebody that had conflict with their brothers. Now there's a verse in Proverbs that says conflict between brothers, that is the hardest conflict to be resolved. You can resolve conflict with other folks pretty easy or easier, but a conflict with a brother offended, is very, very hard to reconcile. It's very difficult to reconcile conflict with a brother. Or probably, you could say, maybe even with a family members, what he's trying to say. And so he's sitting there thinking, what am I going to do? So he's coming from the east, headed west, back towards where Jacob was, down south of Israel. And he had to cross this river called the river Jabbok, the Jabbok River, coming back, because that's a little on the east side of Jerusalem. And so he got there, and he said, I know what I'll do. I got a plan. I got a plan. My plan is this. I'm going to divide everything I got. I'm going to put half of it on the other side of the river, and I'm going to put my wives over there, and I'm going to put the kids over there, and I'm going to keep half of it on this side. And then he had a plan that he was going to divide up several other things, and he's going to send so many cows, so many camels, there in verse 14, 200 female goats, 200 female goats, 20 male goats, 200 ewes, 20 rams, 30 milk camels, and their coats, 40 cows, 10 bulls, 20 female donkeys, and 10 foals. They're in 13, 14, 15. So that was a pretty good little group of people, about a wealth. I don't know what a camel's worth, but that's a pretty good little starting farm there, a ranch he had. And I'm going to send it over there, and I'm going to put, that's going to go towards Esau. And I'm going to have them a little space between each one of them. And when Esau said, what do you got here? He said, well, this is offering that's coming from Jacob, and he's wanting to make peace with you. He said, well, go ahead and put them in the back here. We'll take them. Well, he said, we'll take them later. But anyway, they got them, and then Jacob was left alone there by the river that night. Now that was his plan. If Jacob attacks this little offering that I've given him, then I am not going to wait around for Jacob to get here. I'm headed across the Jabbok River, and I'm going to go over there, and I'm going to solve my problems. Hey, God might promise me he's going to solve them, but if God doesn't come through, I've already got a solution. And my solution is plan B if God doesn't come through. So that was his plan, to run across the river and take up with what I've got half of it. Does that help you understand why the angel touched his hip?
Slow him down.
Totally cripple him. I mean, he was out of business. He was totally out of business. Now that leads me to what I think. Now, I might be wrong, but my thinking is this wrestling match was mental. This wrestling match was surrender wrestling match. It was a wrestling match of surrender. You familiar with that, Judy? You're shaking your head like you already knew that.
I just go.
Why didn't you speak up earlier?
I've heard my husband preach on this a lot, so.
Yeah, okay. So I'm relatively in accord with your husband.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. You should have said that earlier, saved me all that time.
I talk too much, I'm trying to keep quiet.
Saved me all that talking. So, any rate, he said, don't do this. For once in your life, trust God. For once in your shady, finagling life, lay your plans down and trust me, because I already told you up in the first verses that everything's going to be all right. In verse 2, it said, and the angel met him, and in the first several verses, that everything's going to be all right. So that's the number one wrestling match that most of us go through. Now, most likely, somewhere in our lives, God has destroyed our plans to keep from trusting Him. Somewhere in our lives, God touches our hip in a spiritual sense or in a figurative sense to keep us from trusting ourselves. I mean, that we don't trust ourselves. And so, to me, that's the main message in this chapter 32, wrestling match with God. Because there's no other reason for the angel to touch Jacob and cripple him if it wasn't to shut down his plan. He had to shut his plan down. So he said, okay, my plan is down. And then what happened after his plan went astray? Judy, what happened? What did he do?
I'm not gonna talk anymore. I talk too much, y'all.
No, you don't. I'm just glad to hear. So when his plan went down, he got serious with God. When do most people get serious with God?
The very last thought, usually.
When you get flat on your back.
Yeah, there's no way out.
When things get messy.
There's no way out. It's all over. I mean, God, if you don't come through, I'm finished. Yeah, that's when I get serious. Now, Jacob is mentioned all these times. Now, I'm going to try to take at least 2 more times with Jacob to go through some of the other things that went on in his life. And so if you could read a few chapters back, if you wanted to start from chapter 25, if you had time to go 25 chapters, and take a look and see some of the things that's gone on in Jacob's life. And describe the character and the influences that he had. Now, Jacob is mentioned so many times. I know y'all like, well, not they too, the book of Gideon so much. Gideon's just a few chapters long. But Jacob is a lot longer, and there's a lot more in him. There's more, we learn more about Jacob. I was thinking about this the last several days. Who in the Bible do we know the most about? We know a lot about Moses. We know a lot about Joshua. David, know a little bit about Samson, a little bit about Paul. We don't know a whole lot about Paul before he got saved, but studying these people lead me to say this. I heard this a Jewish author. His dad was a Christian, and he's a Christian, and he said every one of us have a book being written about us. On one column, there's things positive. On the other column, there's things negative. He said, when you read through the Bible, you'll see these people, they all have a positive column and they have a negative column. Some of them have a whole lot more negative column, but they all have a positive column and a negative column. When the book is finally written about you, he says, what column is going to be the biggest? Is it going to be the negative column or is it going to be the positive column? And so when we read about Jacob, we take a look at it and we see the negative column and the positive column. Now the negative column always has something to do, like you said, with the trickster or shyster. I forgot the exact word you used, but it was something about, I don't say taking advantage of other people, but a good brother probably would have said, Esau, I see you hungry, let me give you a little something to eat. No way. You got something I want, and I got something you want. And what you have is a whole lot more valuable than a little bit of food, but I want that. And if you're dumb enough to give it to me, I'm going to take it. And now there's another verse that I want you to think about. It's in Malachi. It says, Esau I have hated, but Jacob I loved. Esau I loved. And I wonder at times, did Jacob just start off, did Esau just start off as that proverbial statement, behind the 8 ball? And there was nothing, I mean, he was just messed up from the day he was born. You know, I mean, you're not going to go too far if God hates you. But why did God hate Esau? Another question is, why did Isaac love Esau and not care too much for Jacob? I think the answer's there somewhere. I'll tell you what I think it is. Isaac said he loved Jacob because he liked the food that he cooked. I'm serious. He said he liked Esau. Esau said, go get me something to eat. That's the reason I like you, because you can fix good food. His mother liked Jacob because he helped out around the house. He stayed at home. So it seemed like Jacob had some real parenting skills lacking. He had some real problems there. Now, Jacob, according to the Jewish people, Jacob was 84 when he married Rachel and Leah. And it said that Jacob was celibate until he married those 2 gals. And in the next 7 years, he had 12 children by 4 different women. So he made up for lost time.
So to speak.
I don't know if you want to put that on.
Still rolling.
They'll toss and turn now. They'll toss and turn. That was funny.
But I don't understand how Jacob didn't realize that Laban switched Rachel and Leah.
That's always
I
puzzled
often
me.
wondered that too.
Was he paying attention or what? Should have picked that veils and he was under there.
He was either really deceived or he was pretty plastered after having that party that night. you know, there's just some natural things to think about, but, he said, you know, you deceived me. He said, that's all right. He said, I'll give you Leah if you just stay with Rachel for a week, and then I'll give you Leah a bit later on. Just promise me you'll work another 7 years. You can have both of them. Okay. So next time, let's think about some of the insights that you learned from this. How does this apply? Because if you wanted to, you could stay on this Jacob for several months, sermon after sermon after sermon, study after study after study on Jacob. Yeah, there's a lot there, but the one thing, just think about this, that God said, I'm the God of Jacob because I show him grace. I show him grace, and I can recover every mistake he makes. So if God recovered all the mistakes that Jacob made, you think he can recover the few mistakes we make? Okay. Want to pray before we leave? Okay. Father, thank you for this time together. Thank you for your goodness towards us. And thank you for your word, and help us to learn how to apply it. We pray in Christ's name. Amen.
Thank you, Ronnie.